Thank you, Anup, for organizing this session. Honorable Head of the Department in absentia, Professor N.K. Mishra ji, he will be joining us soon. Professor V.V. Singh, Madam Nidhi Sarma, and all other learned colleagues in the department. Research scholars, a very good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed a matter of pleasure for me that I've been given a chance to initiate this discussion on a topic that has created a lot of heat, given anxiety and pain, and literally rattled economists and policymakers of late. That is the recession, the problem of recession. And as is very usual with we Indians, we very soon jump onto conclusions. We do not waste time in trying to explore and understand the issue. We are quick in framing opinion. So we have been very regular with this. And this time also I could find that depending on our clay, character, construct, or more so by our political hookups, sympathies or liaisons, we have framed opinion about recession. I could find two different opinions very commonly held by people. One group says, this is nothing, this is the normal slide down in the economy, it happens every year in every economy, nothing to really worry about, just wait for the festival season, wait for the harvest, and then automatically demand will increase and the problem will be taken care of. Even Sambit Patra is not as convinced as these people are on how a recession could be handled. There is another group of people who say it is disaster, it is a catastrophe. This is something that has protruded the failure of the present government and eaten up that big dream, that it is a monster that is eating up that big dream of $5 trillion economy. Country is going to fail. So I could see these two views very commonly held. Anup told me that, sir, the reality lies probably in between. I said, yes, I also believe that. So we believe that we should have some sort of discussion on that. Department of Economics feels that we should have discussion so that we have a balanced opinion about the problem of recession and understand the different dynamics of that. Well, it goes without saying that looking at the enormity of task and the very fact that when you talk about recession, you are talking about the entire economy. And as you do so, definitely you talk about state finances, you talk about international trade issues, because these will have implications for recession. You will talk about the problem of unemployment. You will talk about the whole development debate and inequality and how in rural demand is contracting. And these are all specialized issues, areas dealt by different people. So maybe Rajiv is more comfortable talking about the state finances, Madam Nidhi Sarma more comfortable talking about international implications, and so on and so forth. That is why one single individual cannot do justice to this field. So what we decided, Anup and me, along with the team, we decided that I'll be only initiating discussion and then others will join and they will put forth their view. So I stand and I should be evaluated on that basis, that I'm initiating the discussion. Obviously, there are four important sections that I shall be trying to cover depending on the time that I have at my disposal. The first one is recession. I think we can switch the slide off. First, the recession, theoretical underpinning. This is important because maybe some of our first year students are also here. So maybe some basic idea of trade cycle and recession is required. So that I'll start with. Then we talk about the present recession. Is it apprehension or a reality? So some data on the slide of the economy. The third part is the main part, that is the causes of recession. If at all a recession is there, what are the important causes of recession? And fourth, if time permits, attenuation, that is the strategy devised. Well, let's talk first about the theoretical underpinnings. I start with a brief theoretical exposition of the problem of recession that we have in capitalist economies or free market economy. Well, if you look at the long-run growth path of any capitalist economy, it is never smooth. Long-run growth path of a capitalist economy and neoliberal economy is marked to the undulating path of expansion and contraction. The growth path is never smooth. What I mean is, if you look at this line, this diagram, and this straight line, which is going upwards, Economy does not move this fashion. On the horizontal axis, we are plotting time, and on the vertical axis, we are plotting level of economic activity. So, say the GDP, the level of demand, consumption, investment. So, if you are plotting level of economic activity on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal axis, the economy does not move in a very smooth fashion as is reflected by this green straight line upward. It is actually marred by periodic fluctuations in level of economic activity. Rather more by more by this red line, up and down, that kind of movement is there. And the theory says that this movement is very rhythmic. There is different degree of regularity in it. It's sort of a regular occurrence which happens in a capitalist economy. It is synchronic. It is self-enforcing. Self-enforcing means once the expansion or contraction starts in one field of the economy, very soon it will spread in other fields. So suppose there is, because of any reason, contraction of demand in the rural sector, because of, let us say, a fall in the agricultural output, income of the rural household falls, their demand falls. When their demand falls, the demand for FMCG, fast-moving consumer good falls, income of the manufacturer falls, their income falls, their demand falls, and then that cumulative process starts, and it very soon engulfs the entire economy. That is why we are calling it self-enforcing, cumulative. It is all pervasive. Though the impact on different sectors could be differential. A particular sector could be affected more by recession, and the other sector could be affected less. We all know that it has happened during the last recession, that is financial recession as well. Now, there are typically 4 or 5 issues relating to this upward, downward movement, this rhythmic fluctuation in level of economic activity. And economists have been debating, and those of you who have studied trade cycle already know this. Number 1, obviously, is what are the causes of this trade cycle? Why upward movement, downward movement? Why it happens? Why the economy does not move in a very linear fashion? What are the factors which cause it? Second, fine, there are some factors which causes upward, downward movement. The main important thing is why these turning points come. Look at this graph here. The economy is going upward. Now, it should go upward. But why it starts moving downward? If the economy is moving downward, as you see there in the phase of depression, even if the government does not come with any intervention, ultimately depression will also come to an end and recovery will start. So why the turning points? Why upper turning point comes? Why lower turning point comes? So suppose this recession is there. If the government does not intervene, today or tomorrow, this problem of recession will automatically be taken care of the market forces. Though it's a different thing that by the time it takes care of itself, it will completely ruin the economy. And we are not ready to wait till that. So we want to intervene and start the upward movement as soon as possible. But then why upper turning point? Why lower turning point? Third, is there any periodicity and predictability in this trade cyclical movement? Can we say that this upswing is of 3 months or 3 years and downswing is of 1 year or 1 month? Can we know it beforehand? Yes, it is periodic. That is a very important thing because that will help us a lot. And if it is periodic, can it be really predicted? Can we say that? Because if you look at the writings these days, they are saying that 2020 there are going to be a recession, big recession in the US. They are predicting it on the basis of certain changes taking place. So periodicity and predictability. And last aspect, if at all these are going to happen, what are the interventions required? So these 4 aspects have always tortured economists world over. Talking about the causes, there are 3 different explanations given, 3 theoretical explanations given. One says it is primarily the demand shock which caused trade cycle, that is a contraction in consumption, private consumption, a contraction in private investment that can initiate a downturn, or sudden jump in consumption or investment that can start an upturn. So precisely it is private demand shock. And with the development of human society, private demand shock, which used to come through some certain real sources, are now becoming purely financial and also psychological. Remember the last recession that we had. It was a purely financial recession. It did not emerge from real sector. And look at the way the present recession is shaping up. Now the psychological part is becoming very dominant. Everyone is feeling that there is recession, although you in particular have not been affected. I have not been affected. I'm in the government service, my income is not changing, but the economy is going down, the economy is going down. Once you feel, there is a famous term that we use, and that is called self-enforcing prophecy. What you feel, you just actually end up creating that, and we are doing this. Then second aspect is obviously policy shock, some kind of intervention. Private demand, consumption or investment is not changing, but government policy shocks are there. Government policy is changing. That can affect. And third is supply shock. 1970s stagflation, it emerged, and we know that there are a number of reasons which can cause it. Well, theoretically speaking, there are two kinds of recession we talk about. I think if you listen to news, you find that people who are calling it is a simple recession. There are some who are calling it a structural recession. So normally a distinction is made by, of late, it has become very common of making distinction between simple recession and structural recession. Simple recession is also called cyclical recession. Simple or cyclical recession is that recession which normally takes place in the process of evolution of an economy. So as an economy evolves, I think you know Keynesian economics, there is redistribution of income taking place in favor of the rich class. So there is contraction in demand, because as the income moves from the lower strata to the upper strata has low marginal propensity to consume. So obviously the consumption expenditure falls, and that leads to contraction in demand. Recession takes place. This is normal, it happens. If it happens like this, we call it simple recession. Obviously, this kind of simple recession will take place more frequently, and this could be handled by intervention through monetary policy and fiscal policy, primarily through giving demand a push or contracting demand. So if it is expansion and there is overinflation, you tend to reduce demand, and if it is recession, you tend to push the demand upward through expansionary monetary or fiscal policy. The second kind of recession is called structural recession. A structural recession is that recession which is taking place because of certain structural changes in the economy. These are long-term changes in the economy. As an economy evolves, there are change in the basic structure. The contribution of agricultural sector goes down, that of manufacturing and services sector increases, certain kind of manufacturing sector contracts, certain other kind increases. There is technological change which gives advantage to some kind of industries and which work against certain kind of industries. There is change in energy prices which helps some industries, which works against some other industries. Change in the nature of demand. These are all called structural changes. And the structural changes will come after an interval, and these will have long-term repercussions on the economy. So these are caused by deeper malady. And when a problem is caused not by fluctuation in demand, but because of deeper malady, obviously demand management is not going to help the problem. In addition to demand management, I'm not saying demand management will not help at all. In the time of recession, as you go for expansionary monetary and fiscal policy, it will have some impact. But it will not permanently cure recession. There are structural changes, more reforms will be required, some other kind of capital expenditure investment will be required. So we need to understand what kind of inflation do we have in India? Do we have simple or cyclical recession? If yes, then obviously some kind of monetary stimulus or fiscal stimulus will help the economy to regain the normal path. If it is structural also, then definitely monetary stimulus or fiscal stimulus won't work. In fact, modern day recessions are neither completely simple nor completely structural. NBA says that it is an amalgam of mixture of simple and structural. Certain things about modern day recession. Recession have been taking place, but since 1980, we have noted down certain things. Those who are doing research, these are all theoretical things that I'm just explaining to you, because this will help us in better conceptualization of the whole problem of recession. So since 1980s, it has been observed that the expansion phase has been longer and the recession phase has been relatively shorter. Look at this graph. The red line actually shows the period of recession after 1980, and blue line shows period of expansion. Period of expansion after 1980, red line, and before 1980, blue line. If you look at this, and on the horizontal axis, we are measuring period in months. I mean, how many months the particular expansion did last, right? So on the horizontal axis, we are plotting the number of months, and on the vertical axis, we are showing the different recessions. For example, if you look at this one, the first one, top one, this was recession which happened in July, it started in July 1980 and continued till July 1981. That is, the period was, expansion was for 12 months. Look at the last one, started in June 2009, continued till July 2019, period was 121 months, expansion. So if you look at this diagram, what do you get? As you enter 1980, the period of expansion has become longer and the period of recession has become shorter. This has been a very, very special feature of modern day capitalist economy. We have to keep this in mind. It is a very positive thing that expansions are becoming longer and recessions are becoming shorter. Good. Second, recessions are becoming less frequent. Obviously, recession will come after 9 years and for 1 year. So recession will become less frequent. Earlier, every 2 years, every 1 year, recession was coming. So recessions were more frequent prior to 1980, and these have become less frequent after 1980. That is another important feature. Good. Now come to the third one. Data suggests, and our study suggests, that now modern recessions have led to jobless recovery. Rather, this point is more important. They have shown permanent layoffs. What is the meaning of it? It means that when recession happens, we all know people lose job. And after recession, when the recovery phase starts, they should get back the job. But some of them do not get the job. Once they lose job, they remain unemployed. And what is happening these days now, modern recessions, the layoff is becoming relatively more permanent. So they have data from 1969. Look at this chart. 1969, the first recession about which they have information, says that the permanent layoff was 63%. And when recession took place in 2007, that financial crisis, permanent layoff was 78%. It means although recessions are becoming less frequent, but they are doing more harm to unemployment than what they were doing some 30 years back. These are some important features, and as we evaluate Indian recession, these things are going to be taken into consideration. Now, let's come to part 2. This is just some theoretical information that I have given. Now let us come to part 2 and decide whether do we have recession in India. So this cartoon explains more or less the true situation. So after maybe 1 year or 2 years, the economists are finally able to say that yes, the economy is suffering from recession. And by the time we realize the situation of economy, you could see. It's a very common thing with economists. When you cannot change the problem, change the definition of the problem. And Nirpen is not here. We have not been able to handle poverty, so we have been frequently changing the definition of poverty. We have not been able to develop at a fast pace, so we have been changing the definition of development. And with recession also this applies. So, is it recession? There is a famous saying, when your neighbor loses his job, this is an economic slowdown. When you lose your job, this is recession. And when Professor Singh loses his job, it is depression. Right? That is the state of confusion, you see. Whether it is recession or a slowdown or depression, how do you know? And they are saying all different kind of things. So let us say this is the criteria. So when your neighbor loses job, it is slowdown. You lose job, this is recession. And when Professor Singh loses his job, then it is depression. He has not lost his job. My neighbor, Professor Singh, has become Vice Chancellor. So for me, it is expansion and not recession. Right. Now, what is recession? How do you define recession? Right? Because I want to put before you, I want you to judge whether there is recession in India or not. So what is the approved definition of recession? Now look at the first one, which says that if we have 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, that means recession. लगातार 2 क्वार्टर में GDP growth negative हो जाए तो recession होता है. ये definition आया जूलियस सिस्किन द्वारा 1970s may, and for a considerable period of time, IMF supported this. That recession is a situation where for 2 consecutive quarters, the growth rate becomes negative. But then people raised their concern against this definition, because this definition might be very correct for advanced nations who are growing at the rate of 1.5% or 2%. So slight recession will make their growth rate negative. But what about China? What about India? We are growing at the rate of 7%, 8%. So even if recession, the growth rate will not become negative. Growth rate will come down as it has. So 7.5 or 8.2%, we have come down to 5% last quarter. So recession should not be defined as negative growth, rather it should be defined as slowness of or fall in the growth rate. So consecutive quarters of slowing, but still positive GDP growth. That is another concept which emerged later on. Then people talked about growth recession. Well, there are examples where the growth rate is still positive. But if you look at other parameters, unemployment rate is increasing, even investment is not picking up, there is all round gloom and despair. So, should we call it expansion or recession? GDP is increasing, so it is not negative as per the second criteria. GDP growth is still positive and increasing, maybe just by 0.2%. It is not, so 7% it was growing earlier, now 7.2%. So, if the GDP criteria is followed, it is not recession. But economists said, oh, even this is recession, because although GDP is increasing slightly, but other indicators are not very encouraging. Unemployment rate is increasing, investment is falling, other indicators are not. So GDP itself cannot be taken as indicator. Then what? Unemployment? Because whenever recession takes place, there is unemployment, increase in unemployment, right? So we accept it. And different people are given name, let's not waste time in talking about that. Unemployment. Rise in unemployment means recession. Then what about India? Since independence, unemployment has been consistently increasing. So if you talk of developing economy, where unemployment is a chronic problem, unemployment continuously increases over a period of time. So should we infer that these developing nations are in permanent recession? No. It means we need to broaden the definition, include GDP, inflation, unemployment, everything, and then come up with some sort of definition saying that GDP growth should fall, personal income should fall, employment should also fall, industrial production and sales should also fall. Maybe 1 or 2 can increase, but there should be general cohesion agreement in these variables. That is what we are saying, consensus among them. That's what I have written in the last. So it's very difficult to pin down on one particular indicator and say, if it happens, there is recession, right? Now, the indicator, therefore, could be of 3 types. Leading indicator, lagging indicator, and coincident indicator. Leading indicators are those indicators which come before the onset of recession. They will give you a hint that something wrong is coming up, as they are fearing in America. Lagging indicators are those which will tell you that this economy was infected by recession for some time. That is why this kind of distortion is there. And coincident indicators are those which show the present status of the economy. So it's very difficult to define it using only coincident indicator, only leading indicator, or only lagging indicator. With this concept in view, let's see what is happening in India. The definition that I gave to you, I will not give much time to this section because you are bombarded with data every day. और खास करके जो लोग दूसरे पक्ष वाले हैं, it is disaster. वो रोज WhatsApp भेज रहे हैं, आज 4% घट के हो गया, कल 3% हो गया, खत्म, ये आ रहा है. तो डेटा आपके पास बहुत है. मैं कुछ डेटा को एनालाइज करके जिसे कहने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ. Look at the GDP growth rate. The blue one is the 2013-14, where the GDP was low, economy was emerging after recession, and this red line, extreme right, 2 graphs are there, extreme right one, and that red line is GDP growth rate in 2018-19. 5.8%, and if you look at the present one, it has gone down to 5%. So yes, GDP is declining, there is a recession. Unemployment. 2011-12, 2.26%, 2017-18, 6.1. If you look at the periodic labor force survey 2017-18, the result is out recently by NSSO. NSSO also says that the rate of unemployment has gone up. In the usual status, rural it is 5.8, female it is 3.8, urban male 7.1 and urban female 10.1. So it has been increased. I will take the GDP indicator, all right. Unemployment indicator, I as a student of economics won't accept, because it might be a normal feature of the Indian economy where, because of the strategies that we followed in 1991, the rate of unemployment is continuously increasing. So just increase in rate of unemployment at the moment cannot reflect. I'm not saying that it is anti-recession, but it is a normal feature. So you cannot or should not take this. GDP growth rate overall, you see the last one, 6.81, 2018-19 is average, which has continuously gone down. 7.99, 8.16 average, 7.16, and then 6.81. 2019-20, it is going down further. GDP done, it is recession. Let's talk about the gross fixed capital formation, which reflects investment, private investment, so to say. What does the figure say? Again, blue line is for 2013-14 and the red line is for 2018-19. Compare 2018-19, quarter 2 it was 28.5, quarter 3 28.7, quarter 4 29, increasing. So should we say that it is not recession because it is increasing? Or there are people who say, no, earlier it was 34%, now it is 29%, so it is recession. I say, fine, earlier it was 34, accepted. But then you look at this graph, 34% in 2011-12 and continuously falling since then. So should we say, therefore, that the economy was facing recession since 2011-12? No, investment figure does not reflect that. I'm just trying to give you indicators saying, just on the basis of this, there is no recession. On the basis of this, there is recession. But if you combine all this, obviously there is a recession. That is why I said there should be a consensus among different indicators. Similarly, if you look at the industrial production, this is the growth rate of industrial production, 14-15 to 18-19. It has remained stagnant around 3.5%. In fact, core sector, last year it grew at 7.1%. This time it is 2.1%. So, core sector, there is decline. Well, as far as the Indian economy is concerned, look at what we have done to the manufacturing sector. Because of that leapfrog strategy we have followed, you tell me any year where the rate of growth in manufacturing sector has been very high. It has never been so, and that is why we say that our growth is lopsided, because manufacturing sector has not grown. From agriculture, we have directly jumped to the services sector. So it's normal stagnation. The problem is becoming more complicated these days with the onset of recession. The PMI, Purchasing Managers Index, is going down. So overall, things do not look good for the industrial sector, because on an average, PMI, any score of PMI above 50 means things have improved, and below 50 means things have gone down. Although it is still 51.4, July it was 51.4, so still improvement is there, but the rate of improvement has gone down, because the average figure was 53.4, now it has come down to 51.4. So these things do reflect that there is a recession. Look at repo rate. 5 minutes और बोल के मैं इसको खत्म करता हूँ. Repo rate. Blue is again 13-14 and red is 18-19, 5.75. Going down. Repo rate indicates the mood of the economy. If there is expansionary phase, investment is coming up, the central bank will raise the repo rate. If there is contractionary phase, repo rate will be reduced. So it is falling. Recession. Real inflation rate, much below the normal level that we have in India. So the inflation rate is now 3.05, 2.99. Not only that, rural CPI is much lower than the urban CPI, showing that is a greater problem in the rural area as compared to the urban area. And inflation rate is very low, which reflects that there is demand issue. Because why inflation will be low? Because demand is less and supply is relatively more. So that will cause prices to fall or increase at a lower rate. So if you look at inflation figure, definitely recession. Look at other figures. Definitely there has been negative slide. So for example, the domestic car sales minus 23.3, that is an index for or proxy for private demand in the economy. Index for industrial activities, commercial vehicle, which is down minus 9.5. So most of the indicators are in the red. So there is no denial that yes, things are not bright, economy is contracting, recession is setting in. You call it recession, you call it slowdown, doesn't matter, but economy is contracting. That is a reality. That is the second part, talking about whether it is apprehension that there is a recession or actuality. I conclude, based on whatever information I have, that it is actuality. Yes, there is recession, because barring one or two indicators, things are not encouraging. In fact, things are rather discouraging, right? Let us come now to the main aspect. कितने देर तक बोलना यार अनु बता देना, 10 जब एक बार इशारा कर देना. So let's come to the main aspect, that is exploring the antecedents. What are the reasons? What are the causes of inflation? ये ज़्यादा important है. सब जानते हैं recession है. Well, I told you that there are three important three important reasons for recession: private demand shock, policy shock, and structural or supply shock. So we can analyze it based on these three. Or if you try and put it, and if BA students are there, you have studied that y is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So there are four engines in the economy: C consumption, I investment, G government expenditure, and then X minus M, that is the net foreign consumption. So recession will happen if these are contracting, or maybe contraction in one more than overshadows expansion in other. So if private consumption is contracting, investment constant, recession. If private consumption and investment both are contracting, government is not able to increase government expenditure to counter that, recession. So recession could happen because of any of these or a combination of these. Let us try and analyze this, talking about private demand shock. Yes, private demand is contracting. And what are the reasons? What are the factors which have led to the contraction of private demand? I have mentioned some important factors herein. For example, the poor financial position of the household sector. Look at the situation in the household sector. I'm talking first about the wages. Now, what has happened is, in 2010-11, urban wage increased at the rate of 20.5%. In 2013-14, for which figure is available, wages in agricultural sector increased by 27%. So there was very rapid increase in urban and rural wage, which was taking place during around 2011-12. Now, what is happening now? 2018-19, the rate of growth of urban wage has come down to 7%. And the rate of growth of rural wage for last 3 years have been continuously less than 5%. So the rate of growth of wages has gone down. What this has actually given birth to? There is now redistribution of income taking place in favor of the rich class. So India enclave is capturing a higher proportion of the total output as profit, and reward which is going to the workers, wage earner, that proportion of that is going down. So this will cause, and remember typical Keynesian economics, which says that those who are a higher income group, their marginal propensity to consume will be less, and the lower income group, MPC will be high. So income of the lower income group is increasing at a slower rate, and that of the higher income group is increasing at a faster pace. It means there will be contraction in demand. And in rural areas, see, the rate of growth is less than 5%, so contraction in demand in rural area is going to be more severe as compared to that in the urban area. And this is a major cause for recession, that private demand is falling, and especially private rural demand is falling. Well, for a considerable period of time, last 3-4 years, the private demand was financed by bank loan. So private consumption loan stands at a staggering 6.7 lakh crore. This now is drying up. First thing, why did private loan from banks increased? Because initially people were hoping that since the economy is growing at a faster pace, so their income will also be increasing at a very fast pace. So I need a car. Yes, I do need. I don't have money, it doesn't give. So I went to bank, borrowed money from the bank to buy that car, so that my income will increase, and then with that income I'll be able to repay that loan. I was doing that. People were doing that. But last 2-3 years, what they found that wages is not increasing, income is not increasing at that rate. So already the bank loan is giving a telling blow to their economy. So what they did now, they reduced that demand for bank loan. So it could have come even in 2016 or 17, the private demand contraction. It did not come in 2016-17 because that time banks were financing it. People were borrowing and then spending. But now after waiting for 2-3 years, when they find that their income has not increased, they are now cutting down on bank loans. And through that, they are cutting down on private consumption demand. And that is causing aggregate demand in the economy to fall. Now, people are averse to finance consumption through loan now because they are not very hopeful that their income will increase in future and they will be able to repay the loan. There has been a structural shift as well. Now, earlier we were saving in form of bank deposit. Now there are saving in form of insurance, mutual fund and financial products. So that has meant that bank deposits are not rising at the rate it was happening earlier. And most of our deposits are going to be blocked for a longer time. As you invest in mutual fund, as you invest in financial product, that deposit is blocked for a longer time. So that leverage that you had of withdrawing and spending, that is gone now. This is this blue line is the rate of growth of rural wage. देखिए कैसे नीचे गिर रहा है 15 के बाद से लगातार डेटा. और ये जो एम्बर लाइन है ये वाली इसके ठीक ऊपर, ये बता रहा है अर्बन वेज के ग्रोथ रेट को, और ये ओवरऑल इनकम के ग्रोथ रेट को ये बता रहा है, जिसमें आपने वेज के साथ साथ तमाम इनकम को शामिल किया. तो क्या हो रहा है, ओवरऑल द इनकम हैज इंक्रीज्ड अ बिट, but it's not income of the lower strata which has increased, it is income of the relatively higher and upper strata which is increasing. So on the one hand, inequality is increasing, and on the other hand, the demand for FMCG and basic consumer good is contracting, and that is causing a recession. Saving is falling, and much of our investment comes through saving. And look at the saving rate. Financial year 2011, it was 23.1. Now to 2018, it has come down to 17.2. So with fall in saving, banks' credit creating capacity has also gone down. This is one factor which I am calling shrinkage in private financial position of the household sector. Now let us talk about agriculture. What is happening in agriculture, talking in particular about the rural areas. Look at the growth rate. 2017-18, agriculture grew at the rate of 5%, and 2018-19, it has grown at the rate of 2.75%. This is the growth rate for different years. 14-15, it was negative. 15-16, very low. 16-17, 17-18, it was high, but again, it has gone down. And what is happening in 2018-19? It is continuously moving down. So agriculture income is falling. Not only that, you find that there has been drop in the production of pulses, maize, bajra, ragi, and all nutri-cereals in 2018-19. India's agricultural export is falling. इसका मतलब क्या हो रहा है? Agricultural income is stagnant, or agricultural income is falling, and that is, remember, still 50%, 55% or 70% of the total demand comes from the agricultural sector. So contraction in its income means that. Government has made taken certain steps, but somehow this have not been translated into the real benefit. So MSPs have been hiked, but government is not in a position to purchase the surplus grain at that declared MSP. E-market, E-NAM, it has introduced a number of steps. They must be praised for that. So many steps, so many interventions the government has taken. A time lag will be there, maybe after a year or a year and a half, these will fructify, but at that moment, it is not happening, right? Coming to commercial banks, NPA increasing, आप लोग का तो हीरो मलाया जी हैं, और हम जानते हैं कि कितना पैसा NPAs के फॉर्म में बैंक का हो रहा है. ऐसा बिजनेस जिसको हर 2 साल के बाद सरकार को अलग से पैसा देना पड़ता है, recapitalization. So you have lost all your capital, fine, government will give you capital to continue your business. That is happening with Indian banks. 70,000 crore only recently the government announced. Few years back also the government had recapitalized commercial bank. And it's not bank which are to be exactly blamed. It is overall setup of the economy, and there was provision for people to borrow and just run away, declare themselves bankrupt, and stay happy with the money that they have borrowed. Government has come up with a number of measures now, and that has now trying to strangulate this kind of happenings. But at the moment, banks are in crisis because it has happened in the past, and their balance sheet is very, very difficult. Now coming to NBFC. I think you know the ILFS story. ILFS, the infrastructure, leasing and financial services, a major non-banking financial company which had investment by Life Insurance Corporation, by another a Saudi Arabian firm, major investors. It was a major player in the non-banking financial company segment. And what happened recently, 6 months, 8 months back, it was not able to manage its finances well. So its total liability stood at 91,000 crores, which was many times more than its asset. And unfortunately, the liability was turning into bad debt. So it gave loan to, say for example, let me give you an example. Real estate company, Asiana borrowed money, invested, tried to construct buildings to sell to the people, and then came government's provision. We said, now whenever you buy a house, the payment has to be through digital mode and these things. So whatever payment you made, that payment has to be legally accounted for. So all of a sudden, people who had deposited and booked houses, they have withdrawn. जब इन लोगों ने विड्रॉ कर लिया तो आसियाना का जो बिल्डिंग था वो रास्ते में छूट गया क्योंकि पैसा ही नहीं है. जब बिल्डिंग रास्ते में छूट गया तो आसियाना इनको लोन कहाँ से देगा? तो जो इनके borrowers थे ILFS के, the borrowers started defaulting. Land acquisition, I'll give you data. So many reasons were there. And ILFS was a leading non-banking financial company. When ILFS shrank, it was like the Indian Lehman Brothers sort of. When ILFS slumped, it had a ripple effect on other non-banking financial companies. And NBFCs, my friend, these are very, very important now. These were not so important some 10 years back. Now, 1/5 of the total loan in India is being given by the non-banking financial companies. And what is more important, the growth rate of the credit given by NBFC is higher than the growth rate of credit given by the banks. Look at this table. Green line is the growth rate of loan of bank, and red line by the non-banking financial company. So for example, in 2014, bank loan grew at the rate of 14% and NBFC loan by 14.8%. And what is the figure in 2018? Bank loan by 10% and NBFC by 19.6%. So they were a major player in the market. When they shrank, the credit given by them fell down. When the credit given by them fell down, there was sudden fall in contraction in demand, and that caused a negative sentiment throughout, and that caused the economy to shrink. So what happened? They are NPAs of NBFC. You see, this is the chart. NPA of NBFC started increasing as industries started failing. So there was negative sentiment. Bank became very worried about these NBFC because they had given loan to NBFC. So bank started withdrawing money. जो commercial bank पैसा दे रही थी, उनको लोन दे रही थी. ये commercial bank से लोन लेते हैं और फिर उसको देते हैं. क्योंकि कमर्शियल बैंक डायरेक्टली लोन नहीं दे सकते, बहुत रिस्क उनको लगता है. इनका ज़्यादा प्राइवेट पब्लिक कनेक्ट होता है एनबीएफसी का. सो दे विल बोरो मनी फ्रॉम कमर्शियल बैंक एंड गिव इट टू द पब्लिक. बट व्हेन दे स्टार्टेड फेलिंग, कमर्शियल बैंक ने अपना हाथ पीछे खींच लिया. So what happened? The total loan to NBFC by commercial bank fell down by 31%. So their source of fund dried up, number one. Number two, the loan that they had given, now it is not coming back. So they are in a fix. Now what to do? They have been downgraded by credit agencies. So mutual funds who were earlier investing in NBFC, they are not. उनको लग रहा है कि खतरा है, इसमें नहीं इन्वेस्ट करो. तो फंड आएगा कहाँ से? एनबीएफसी के पास. और एनबीएफसी के पास जब पैसा नहीं आएगा, 1 लाख करोड़ रुपया उनको 1 महीने के अंदर ड्यू है. जिनसे लोन लिया है उनको चुकाना है, लेकिन जिन्होंने इनसे लोन लिया है वो नहीं चुका रहे हैं, तो उनको कैसे देंगे? इसका मतलब है कि ये फेल करेंगे, और फेल करेंगे तो फिर इसका रिपल इम्पैक्ट होगा. तो दिस इज हैपनिंग, राइट? सो the fresh advances have dried up. ऐसे बहुत सारी चीज़ें हैं. Oil stock you talk about. When the Narendra Modi government came to power in 2014, it was very fortunate that for another next 3, 4, 5 years, there was fall in crude prices. I think you remember that. And that helped the government in controlling inflation. What has happened of late is that despite slowdown in the international market, because of that Iran crisis, US-Iran crisis, I think you know that, America has imposed embargo on export of oil from Iran. So in the international market, crude oil prices have started increasing. So from $48 per barrel, it has gone up to $60 per barrel. And that is again having depressing or negative impact on the economy. And then private investment has gone down. Let us take some data on this. Anup बोल देना यार जब भी बोलना हो. Some data on this. ये जो chart है आपका, look at this chart. This is showing new project announced in different years between 2016 to December 2018. The longer the higher the bar are, higher is the new investment. The red portion or is green, light green portion shows new investment by government sector, and this dark portion shows new investment by private sector. As you move to the right, September 17, December 17, March 18, and here this is December 18. Look at this height of this chart. New investment gone down considerably. Not only that, if you look at sector-wise classification, you find that except construction sector, in all other sectors, private investment has declined. That is a major cause of concern because that has caused income to fall significantly and resulted in recession. Now, why it has happened? ऐसे क्यों हो गया भाई? This happened because of a number of reasons. For some reason, the government is indirectly responsible. For some, it is not. For example, land acquisition. You know that 2013-14 land acquisition bill came. And after that, government significantly increased. It was done earlier. Government significantly increased the compensation. So urban area now it is 2 times, the rural area it is 4 times the circle rate. It's a huge amount. It has gone down. The cost of land that different industries were trying to acquire to set up industry, and for that they had taken loan from the non-banking financial companies or other sources. They borrowed from from an NBFC. They were trying to set up industry somewhere, let us say in भाई साहब के घर के बगल में, बिल्डिंग महल के बगल में. But earlier that land was available for 10 lakh. Now because of this land acquisition act, now the price of that has gone up to 40 lakh. And then there are so many conditions. If you, Abhishek and I wrote a paper on land acquisition for a seminar here. There are so many other conditions they have put. They have to give this compensation to the family, job to the family, so many things. That has caused the cost of land to increase significantly. And many projects have become unviable. So whatever money they have invested, now they have stopped there and they have withdrawn. But this money that they have invested, that was not their money. It was bank's money, it was NBFC's money. So that has turned into bad debt, NPA of bank. So banks are running short of fund. And then there are other reasons, lack of fund, fuel supply, environmental clearance, non-environmental clearance. So many factors are there. Some because of the steps taken by the government. Remember, these steps were all taken with good intentions. But these have immediate negative intention. These had immediate negative intention. ठीक है, आगे बढ़ते हैं, थोड़ा गवर्नमेंट की बात करते हैं. बड़ा सेंसिटिव मुद्दा है भाई आज के ज़माने में, इसलिए मैं 2 कंडीशन लगा के बोलूँगा. कंडीशन नंबर 1, what I have understood from my little bit knowledge of economics, I try to put that I might be wrong. Condition number 2, more important, is that when I talk about the impact of GST on recession, I am not evaluating GST because GST has many ramifications, and I am not in a position and neither I have the expertise nor time to understand GST in all its ramifications. I am just trying to evaluate GST from the perspective of recession, demonetization from the perspective of recession. GST might have done wonders in other field, but what it has resulted, what it has caused in case of recession, that is what I am saying. इसलिए अब मैं GST को evaluate नहीं कर रहा हूँ, so it should not be interpreted that way, right? I am trying to explain its impact. Business contraction after GST. Yes, it is true that business has contracted after GST. There are implementation hiccups with GST. You may say the government was prepared, not prepared. I'm not going to fall in that debate. You can talk about it. But the world over, there are only two exceptions, Australia and Canada, where implementation of GST did not lead to fall in government revenue in initial years. Everywhere it has happened. Wherever GST had been introduced, initial few years, couple of years, government revenue has gone down. Australia and Canada are the only two exceptions, and you know probably more than 130 countries of the world have GST now. So it was going to happen because it was a drastic change in the way taxes were being calculated and things like that. But what has actually happened is, government has hoped that the GST collection will go up and it will very soon, maybe we have already, I believe, 2 years completed. July 1st, 2017, it was introduced, and we were hoping the things to improve. Things have definitely improved, because if you look at the average collection per year, 2017-18 average collection was only 89,800 crore per month, while 2018-19 it has gone up to 98,100. तो बढ़ा है, 89,000 से हम 98,000 greater compliance हुआ है, सारे GST collection बढ़ा है, लेकिन ये उतना नहीं बढ़ा जितना कि हम hope कर रहे थे. Government was hoping. So overall, what has happened is the collection of indirect taxes has not increased. In fact, there has been a sort of fall by amount around 60% if budget estimate is to be taken as the basis. So what was estimated in the budget as far as indirect tax collection is concerned, actual tax collection was less by about 16%. It means government has not been able to meet its target. That is the impact of GST. ये data है जो दिखाता है कि गिरता है लेकिन overall बढ़ रहा है. But still the increase is not significant and sufficient revenues not being generated. I can go on counting different regions, different negatives and positives of GST. Rajiv is the better person to talk about it, but still we can still talk about certain issues, certain, you can call it teething problems. When you introduce something new, very drastic, the whole system is changing and you have a very large unorganized sector, it will always take time to adjust to that. And initially the overall impression that mood that GST created was negative, because the shopkeepers normally felt that they are going to be at a loss. Whether they are at a loss or not, again we can debate and we can say, because one of my friend is Joint Commissioner Sales Tax, so and I keep talking to him on GST issue. He says, ये सारा बहानेबाजी है, बहुत फायदा हो रहा है, सबसे lowest level पे जो unorganized sector के लोग हैं, उनको थोड़ा सा नुकसान हुआ है, otherwise व्यापारियों को ज़्यादा फायदा हुआ है, government को नहीं हुआ है. As a person who is looking after sales tax, that is his view. तो ये वो लोग एक कैसा एक ऑरा क्रिएट करके रखा है व्यापारियों ने कि हमें बहुत लॉस हो रहा है, हमें बहुत लॉस हो रहा है, हमें बहुत लॉस हो रहा है. बिकॉज theoretically speaking, GST cannot result in loss to because they are going to get different kinds of input credits, but they are suggesting that. Problem is there, yes, because of lower threshold limit, even the small manufacturers, the small traders, they have to get themselves registered, and they are not so computer friendly, they don't know how to handle, say, internet. All these problems were there. What happened? Sorry. All these things have actually happened. And I recall, I was looking after one of the department here in the university, and we were buying a lot of things from the unorganized sector earlier. But when GST came, university office, accounts office said, now we want only GST bill. So my office had to run from pillar to post to get the GST bill. For example, I was in press and we had to buy Lifebuoy soap that we give to the people who work in the press. Earlier we used to buy it from the local shop, nearby shop. He was also happy, 4 carton बिक्री हो जाता है. अब हमने कहा भैया GST बिल लगेगा. बोला मेरे पास तो सर GST तो नहीं है registration. Then we had to finally get hold of the company which was supplying Lifebuoy, and through that company we had a problem, and that seller, shopkeeper, he lost our demand. So it will happen, or it has happened, and that has really created initial hiccups, and that has caused the demand to Anup, समय बताते जाना यार. contract. क्या हो रहा है? ठीक है? Let us come to the case of rate of interest. Have we able to manage the rate of interest well? I'll say no. Let us discuss this, friends. I'm talking of the real rate of interest. Now, at the moment, the rate of inflation is 3.4%. The repo rate is 5.75%, and SBI base rate is 9.05%. Now we calculate real policy rate. What is real policy rate? Real policy rate is the repo rate minus inflation rate. उसी को हम कहते हैं real rate. यानी rate के से आप inflation को घटा दीजिएगा तो जो निकलेगा वो real rate of interest होगा. So real rate means 5.75 minus 3.4, it comes to 2.35. If you calculate real interest rate, it will be SBI base rate minus inflation rate, it comes to be 5.65. Internationally, a real rate of interest between 1.5% to 2% is considered advisable and preferable for growth. We have been maintaining a relatively higher rate of interest, higher real rate of interest. That has discouraged investment. That has actually discouraged investment, right? So the overall inflation, the rate of interest has been very high. And you see the rate of interest has been continuously increasing. If you make a comparison between India and other countries, see in all sector, real estate sector, our effective rate is 12%, Japan it is very low, US very low, retail sector it is 18%, trucking 19%. In all important sectors of the economy, the real rate of interest we have maintained at a very high level. And that has discouraged investment and expenditure in that field, and that has had a negative impact. I have to run through that. Now the next aspect obviously is tax proposals and tax prudence. Government came up with different tax proposals. Government's fair intention was there. It wanted to reduce fiscal deficit. It has been able to reduce fiscal deficit. But when you are reducing fiscal deficit, how do you do this? You try and increase your income and reduce your expenditure. Increase in income and reduction of expenditure is always going to have negative impact on demand. How you increase income? By increasing tax, that will reduce the disposable income. And how you reduce expenditure? Obviously through expenditure contraction, that will again cause fall in demand. So what I was hoping, in fact we discussed it here, the pre-budget survey, I was hoping that this time the government is going to give some tax rebate to the middle class. But government went for fiscal consolidation. And Nirmala Sitharaman ji said, now we will control fiscal deficit. And ultimately what is happening, they are now forced to go for a stimulus package of 1 lakh crore and take loan from RBI and invest. So ultimately you have to surrender that fiscal, say, balance scenario. And number of steps that the government took actually went against it. Again, it was with fair intention. Then there was problem of demonetization. I don't have time, otherwise I have a number of slides to show how demonetization has affected recession. Definitely demonetization has had a negative impact because demonetization has led to contraction of income of the lower strata. And that has affected interest. The benefit that the government had presumed demonetization will have, somehow the benefit has not occurred. अब मैं एक चार्ट आपको दिखा के छोड़ देता हूँ उसमें. कहाँ चला गया? डिमोनेटाइजेशन इनफॉर्मल सेक्टर कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किया है, लग्जरी रियल एस्टेट को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचा है. आप में से किसी भी, if you know anyone who is in the real estate business, he will say that demonetization has ruined us. Because what was happening in real estate sector? At least 30 to 40% of the price of the flat was paid in black. When demonetization took place, whatever black money was there, that black money flew to the commercial bank. So people were left with no black money. So obviously, all of a sudden, there was contraction in the real estate segment because people were not able to buy. अब इसके लिए क्या डिमोनेटाइजेशन गलत है? मैं नहीं कह रहा हूँ कि डिमोनेटाइजेशन गलत है. मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि उसका ये जो इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है वो नेगेटिव पड़ रहा है डिमांड पे. ब्लैक मनी को, मैं तो राजीव जी हैं नहीं, मैं तो कहता कि मैं डायबिटिक हूँ, मैं डायबिटीज़ की दवाइयाँ खाता हूँ, इसका असर हार्ट पे पड़ता है, तो डायबिटीज़ की दवाइयाँ खाना छोड़ दूँ क्या? What we need to do is look at the negative impact and try and control that. Just accusing the government for this or that is not going to help. Because whatever has been done with some intention. It has not yielded result because of some reason. We need to find the reason, try to block it, plug it. Right. So मैं आपको बता रहा था, देखिए आपने उम्मीद किया कि will impose penalty of undisclosed income. It has not happened. कहाँ? ऑफिस? अच्छा, ये रखा जाए. Sambhu ji is so innocent. Broadening of taxation base. Yes, it has happened. आप सबको मालूम, we know it already. That number of taxpayer is continuously increasing, and it is all the good work of demonetization. You cannot discredit it. Better tax compliance not happened. We expected that because of better tax compliance, tax rate will be cut. Tax compliance has not increased and tax rates have not gone down. That is why it has created negative impact. Sudden jump in indirect tax collection. Government hoped that it will result in sudden jump in indirect tax collection. It has not happened. Cashless transaction. What has happened is, it's very ridiculous. And how can it happen? Prior to devaluation, demonetization, cash to GDP ratio was around 14%. Now it has gone up to 19%. So government had hoped that after demonetization, it will promote cashless economy and the cash to GDP ratio will fall, people will start using plastic cards, but this is not happening. It has gone up to 19%. So there are a number of factors. I don't have time to explain all this. Demonetization. Then black money control. So many steps government has taken, and it has immediate impact on contraction of productive activity. Why? Slow on return. These things have happened. Then मैडम चली गई हैं, मैडम की बात कर सकते हैं अगर आप चाहें तो. I don't have time. US-China trade war. इसका impact है. You cannot say that only the government is to be blamed. There has been trade war between US-China. $510 billion worth of commodity US is importing from China. And now it is imposing 25% tariff on that. So suddenly China's export are falling. China's income are falling. And the commodity that China was demanding from other nation, that is falling. So India's export will fall. It will have ripple effect. Any nation, German recession has primarily got to do with Chinese, this US-China war. So ये सारी चीज़ें हो रही हैं. देखिए लगातार फॉल कर रहा है. तो इसके इम्पैक्ट हैं. उतना समय नहीं है हम लोगों को डिस्कस करने का. जर्मन रिसेशन. डिस्टॉर्शन इन इनकम. ये जो डिस्टॉर्शन की बात मैं कह रहा था, डिस्टॉर्शन इज देयर in Japan and in US, sir. What is happening? In Japan and US, the share of wage in total output is continuously falling. Japan mein, there has been negative growth of wage. So wage rate, instead of increasing, has gone down. And this is a feature not only of Japan, this is happening in US, this is happening in Germany as well. So all these economies find that the income of the segment which was generating maximum demand, income of that segment is contracting. So obviously there is fall in the demand, and that fall in demand will mean fall in export from India. So all these things are happening. So friends, and then on top of that, we have structural changes. The time that is given to me is over. So let me come to the last aspect, running through what is the strategy. I am not here to suggest a strategy. I'm rather to raise question. Two questions I raised. What kind of recession is it? Simple or cyclical or structural? Whatever I've tried to communicate to you, or whatever I have read, helps me to understand that it is a mixture of both simple and structural. Since it is a mixture of both simple and structural, it is not only short term, it also has long term component of it. So when people say that it is a major problem, they are not totally wrong. But when people say that it is partly short term also, they are also not wrong. Right? What kind of solution you could have? Demand stimulus, if it is a cyclical inflation. A structural adjustment, if it is a long-term investment or structural investment. Since it is both, so what the government should be doing, government should be having a combination of demand stimulus and a structural adjustment. दोनों एक साथ करने होंगे. सिर्फ डिमांड स्टिमुलस से this recession is not going to end. I suggest, ये अरबे सोच छोड़ दीजिए. I suggest Abenomics for this. Abenomics is nothing but a policy which was followed by Shinzo Abe, the Prime Minister of Japan. When he became Prime Minister, Japan was facing a lot of issues. 1990 is known as in Japan as the lost decade because they had stagnant growth, rather negative growth. They call it the period of suspended animation. And in that time, Abe became the Prime Minister. And he introduced a policy tool. It is for you to judge and evaluate. Can we think of this kind of policy tool in India? He said 3 things we need to follow to resurrect the economy. Number 1, bold monetary policy. Go for monetary expansion. Can we do it? Yes, we can do it because inflation rate is very comfortable. So as far as India is concerned, as far as bold monetary policy is concerned, we can do it because the current inflation rate is only 3.4, 3.5%. So if you go for monetary expansion and the rate of inflation jumps from 3.4 to 4.4 or 5.4, even that is not going to hurt the economy. So monetary expansion stimulus is possible and government is doing that. Flexible fiscal policy, Japan adopted it. What about us? We are constrained. Although there is 1% buffer with us, we can say we can manage a fiscal deficit of up to 4.4. We are presently having 3.4. So maybe some kind of some more fiscal deficit, more expenditure policy and tax reduction policy we can think of. And third, these 2 are for the simple cycle. And third is reforms. The process of reform is irreversible, right? Our friends who do not like reform because of their political ideology, although they all benefit from it, they all move in very expensive cars and use laptop, iPhone and Apple MacBook, and they talk about equality. Now, those friends might oppose this very idea of reform. Reform is an irreversible process, friend. Once it starts, the juggernaut will roll and you will have to reform. If you try to stop it, you will get crushed. We have started reform and you are now trying to derail it. You are trying to say that in the name of socialism, in the name of this, in the name of that, we should try to stop it. No, it is not possible. So you have to take a stand. You want to be a socialist economy? Fine, you might become one, but be prepared to sacrifice things. As China did in the era of Mao Zedong, as Russia did in the era of Stalin, or as Russians were forced to do by Stalin. Are Indians, can you force Indians to make that sacrifice? No. हमारी आय घटा दो ना, 2 लाख मिलता है, कर दो 1 लाख रुपया सोशलिज्म के नाम पे. We will not do it. We are not. It is unacceptable. So that kind of policy paradigm that we try to suggest is not acceptable. So we have to do more reforms with a human face. What kind of reform? Some suggestion I can give, but then we can always debate about the extent of reform, about the sequence of reform, about the timing of reform. So I suggest, friend, that along with the stimulus, monetary and fiscal, further reforms are required. Who knows? Tomorrow we might see this also. Thank you.